Dawn broke over dust water with a cold wind that carried the smell of ash and far-off rain. The sun was a pale coin trembling behind a curtain of gray, and the dirt street shimmered faintly with last night's frost. A wagon creaked in from the north road, half-splintered, drawn by a mule that looked as weary as the woman guiding it. Clara Wynne sat stiff on the driver's plank, her fingers gripping the reins like they were the only thing keeping her upright. Her shawl was torn, and the color had faded from her dress to something between gray and sorrow. When she stepped down, the street went still. Men paused by the blacksmith's forge. Women froze mid-sweep on their porches. And the piano in the saloon stuttered to silence. Someone whispered her name, Clara Wynne. Back again. Marjorie Pike, wrapped in her widow's black, leaned against the post office rail and tilted her chin high. Some folks don't know when they're not wanted, she said loud enough for everyone to hear. Clara didn't look up. Her boots sank into the soft dust as she moved past the stairs. Each step felt like crossing a river she'd drowned in before. Her hands trembled as she adjusted her shawl, muttering, "Please, not again." Sheriff Dalton Red watched her from the end of the street, hat in hand. He'd seen her leave 2 years ago, broken, barefoot, running from a life no one would help her escape. He tipped his hat this time, a quiet apology for all the silence back then. The wind caught her shawl and lifted it like a pale flag of surrender. She clutched it close and kept walking toward the church, hoping for sanctuary. The preacher's wife met her at the door, eyes narrow as knife points. "We've got enough mouths in need," she said, and pulled the door closed. The sound of the latch echoed in Clara's chest. She turned away slowly, her reflection flickering in the church window, thin, hollow-eyed, not quite living. Around her, dust water resumed its rhythm. The blacksmith's hammer, the far-off neigh of a horse, gossip rolling like tumbleweed. She drifted through it unseen, except by one man leaning beside his horse across the street, Elias Boone. The rancher's broad frame cast a shadow that cut through the dust. His face was carved from quiet, jaw marked by an old scar, eyes still as creek water under ice. He didn't move, didn't speak. But when Clara's eyes met his, the air between them changed. He gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. Old Tully, his ranch hand, watched from beside the wagon load of supplies. "Reckon he's seen a ghost from his own heart," he murmured. That night, Clara sat alone on the edge of town behind the livery stable, her hands raw from cold. She had nowhere left to go. Boyd Turner's name still haunted her like a curse. Her late husband's brother, self-righteous, cruel, always saying she owed the family her obedience. She'd run from him once, thinking the world would open its arms. Instead, it shut every door. When her husband died in that cattle stampede, folks said she was cursed, that every man near her met ruin. No one asked how many nights she'd gone without food, or how many times she'd prayed not to wake. The wind whispered across the plain, stirring the lanterns of the saloon. Clara pulled her shawl tight and looked toward the far hills. She'd heard there was work out west, ranches needing help. But dust water was as far as her mule would carry her. In the dark, she made her decision. She'd go to the Boone Ranch. The trail was long, the air sharp enough to sting her lungs. When she reached the wooden gate, her legs shook with exhaustion. Lantern light flickered in the ranch house window. She hesitated, then knocked. The door opened. Elias stood framed in the light, tall and quiet, his shirt sleeves rolled to the elbow. The golden lamp caught the edge of his scar. He looked at her without surprise, as if he'd been expecting her. "I heard you might need help," she said, voice thin as thread. He said nothing. Just raised the lantern a little higher, and she flinched. The light showed the faint yellow bloom of a bruise beneath her hairline. His expression changed. He lowered the lantern slowly, letting the light fall between them instead of on her. "Kitchen's through there," he said at last, stepping aside. She entered like someone crossing into a church. The warmth hit her face and nearly made her cry. He poured her coffee and left her alone to drink it. She ate bread that tasted like mercy. When he returned, he said only, "You can sleep in the loft. Roof leaks a bit, but it's dry tonight." She nodded, unable to meet his eyes. Later, lying on the hay, she stared at the moonlight pouring through the cracks. Every creak of the barn made her tense. Then she saw the shadow of Elias's lantern pass across the boards. He was checking the fences, his steps even, unhurried. For a moment, fear twisted in her chest. Old reflex, old pain. But then she realized the light was moving away, not closer, that he wasn't watching her. He was watching over her. She whispered into the dark, "Please, not again." And this time, it wasn't a plea to stop, but a prayer for peace. Morning came wrapped in frost and pale gold. Clara rose before dawn and began to sweep the porch. Her hands found rhythm in the work, her mind easing a little with each motion. When Elias came out, he simply nodded. "Coffee's on the stove," she said. He didn't smile. But there was warmth in his silence. By midday, she was feeding the horses, brushing their coats until they shone. The animals didn't flinch from her. They trusted her hands. Old Tully came by, chewing tobacco. "You handle 'em gentle," he said. "Most folks come at life like they're breaking it in. You coax it." Clara didn't answer. She just kept brushing, lost in thought. That afternoon, she went into town with Elias for supplies. Dustwater buzzed with whispers before they even stepped off the wagon. Marjorie Pike's sharp voice carried across the porch of the general store. Heard Elias Boone took her in. Ain't that something? Poor man doesn't know what follows her kind. Clara froze. The words hit like stones. She could feel every eye turning. Elias didn't flinch. He stepped past them, loaded the feed sacks himself, and said only to the clerk, "Add 2 bars of soap to that." Then he tipped his hat to Clara, signaling they were leaving. No words for the gossip. No defense. Just quiet dignity that burned hotter than any anger could. As they rode back, the wind pressed against them. She kept her eyes on the horizon, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. That night, she sat by the fire after supper, staring at her hands. "You don't have to keep me," she said softly. "I know what they're saying." Elias looked up from mending a bridle. "Don't pay much mind to talk," he said. "But it'll hurt you," she whispered. He shrugged. "Already been hurt. This ain't nothing new." She wanted to ask about the scar on his jaw, about the woman's picture on the mantel, but she didn't. Some silences weren't meant to be filled. Later, when she went to her room, a small one off the kitchen, she saw something on the chair, a folded blanket. New, soft, clean. She stood there a long time, hands trembling. Outside, the prairie wind sighed through the dry grass, carrying dust and secrets. She pulled the blanket close, closed her eyes, and let herself breathe without fear. For the first time in years, somewhere out beyond the fence, Elias Boone looked out over the starlit fields. His lantern flickered once, then went out. The night held its breath, as if both of them were learning what safety sounded like. The days that followed came soft and slow, like dawn spreading over snow. Winter had begun to melt its hold on Dustwater, and in that quiet in-between, something unseen began to mend. Clara woke each morning before the light, humming faint tunes from some forgotten time as she kneaded dough in the kitchen. She'd learned to move silently, to leave space for the house to breathe. Elias would come in from the barn, boots muddy, shoulders heavy with the scent of cedar and wind. He never said much, just nodded as he hung his hat. Yet the silence between them began to feel less like distance and more like peace. He'd watch her through the rising steam of his coffee, the soft rhythm of her hands steadying him more than he could admit. When she laughed once, a small, startled sound after the kettle whistled too loud, he found himself staring. He'd thought her voice was gone. Old Tully saw it before either of them did. "That woman's workin' to stay invisible," he muttered one morning, spitting into the dirt. "Maybe let her be seen, boss." Elias squinted toward the house. "She don't need savon. Just peace." "Ain't sayin' save her," Tully replied. "Just reckon peace sounds better when it's shared." By early spring, Clara had begun tending the garden out back. The old earth, once hard and dry, softened under her care. Tomatoes, beans, little green shoots, all reaching for the same thing. She was light. For the first time, Elias saw her standing tall under the sun. Sleeves rolled, hair pinned loose, wind tugging at her skirt. She didn't see him watching. He didn't move. Some moments weren't meant to be disturbed. But peace never lasted long. In Dustwater Point one gray afternoon, the sound of hooves broke the calm. Sheriff Dalton rode in from town, hat low against the wind. He dismounted with a sigh. "You got trouble brewing, Elias," he said. Boyd Turner's back. Elias's jaw tightened. "What's he want?" Dalton spat in the dirt. "Same thing he always did. Control. Claims Clara was his brother's property." Says he's taking her home. Elias said nothing, just stared off toward the ridge where the clouds were gathering. Dalton's voice softened. You know she's had it hard. You let her stay. You best be ready to stand between her and that man. Elias only nodded once. I'll stand. That night, the storm came howling over the plains. The ranch lanterns flickered as wind lashed the walls. Clara felt it before she heard it, the voice she feared most. Clara, you best come out here, girl. Her heart stopped. She rose from the table, hand trembling over her apron. Outside, a horse neighed, hooves thundering against the mud. Boyd, she whispered. Elias was already on the porch. Lightning carved the sky, lighting the man below, Boyd Turner, slick with rain, eyes burning. He swung off his horse and pointed up at Elias. You got my brother's woman hiding in there, he shouted. She's mine to deal with. Elias stepped down, calm as stone. You best go home, Boyd. Boyd laughed, the sound sharp and mean. You think you can keep her? You don't know what she is. She ruins every man she touches. Clara appeared in the doorway, shaking. Please, Boyd. Just leave. He sneered. You'll come back when I say. You hear me. When he grabbed her arm, Elias moved faster than thought. His hand caught Boyd's wrist, hard enough to make him drop his grip. Not again, Elias said. Low, quiet, final, for a heartbeat. All was still but the rain. Boyd's face twisted. You protecting her? You think she's worth that scar of yours? Elias's eyes didn't waver. I think no one deserves to be afraid. The sound of boots in mud, the sheriff's voice cutting through. That's enough, Boyd. Mount up and ride out. Boyd spat in the dirt, glaring between them. You'll regret this, both of you. He swung into his saddle and disappeared into the storm, the wind carrying his curses into the dark. When it was quiet again, Clara sank to her knees. Her breath came in shallow bursts. Elias knelt beside her, rain dripping from his hair. Why'd you stop him? She whispered. You don't even know what I've done. He shook his head. Don't need to. Tears blurred her vision. They say I ruin men. Elias looked at her then, really looked. You've been ruined by them, not the other way around. She stared back, stunned. His voice was rough, but his gaze was steady and kind. Something inside her cracked open. He reached for the lantern, adjusted the flame, and for a moment, the room glowed soft and gold. Her face reflected in his eyes. She looked away, embarrassed by her tears. That he didn't speak again, and that silence was the gentlest thing she'd ever been given. In the days after, Dustwater hummed with gossip. Marjorie Pike told anyone who'd listened that Elias Boone had gone soft for a fallen woman. The men in the saloon laughed. But the ranch hands stayed loyal. They'd seen how hard Clara worked, how she gave without asking. Each morning, Elias found something changed: a mended fence post, clean laundry, a loaf of bread cooling on the table. And each night, Clara left his coat folded by the door. One evening, he rode into town alone. When he returned, he carried a bolt of blue calico. Figured the old curtains were too worn, he said, setting it on the table. Her hand brushed the fabric. She felt its softness, the thought behind it. Her throat tightened. Thank you. He nodded. You've made this place feel alive again. The words lingered in the air. Then, one late night, fire split the sky. The smell of smoke tore through the house. Clara shot up from her bed and ran outside. The barn was ablaze, flames devouring the roof, sparks scattering into the wind. She screamed for Elias. He was already there, bucket in hand, shouting orders to the ranch hands. Get the horses. She cried, stay back. He yelled, but she didn't listen. She ran through the smoke, coughing, untying ropes with shaking hands. The horses bolted, whinnying into the night. Then she saw him, Boyd, stumbling near the flames, a bottle in his hand, his face half lit by fire. You think you can take everything from me? He snarled. I'll burn you both out. The beam above him cracked. Without thinking, Clara lunged forward, grabbing his arm. Boyd, get out. He resisted, wild-eyed. You should have stayed down. Elias appeared beside them, hauling Boyd out as the barn collapsed in a storm of sparks. They fell into the mud, coughing, covered in ash. Boyd's breathing was ragged. Blood on his shirt. You'll never be free, he rasped, eyes fading. Elias's voice came low. We both should have treated her better. When Boyd went still, Clara turned away, sobbing quietly. Elias put a hand on her shoulder, steady as the ground beneath her by dawn. The barn was nothing but black skeleton beams against the pale sky. Smoke rose straight and thin. Sheriff Dalton stood nearby, hat off. He died quick, he said. Didn't suffer long. Elias nodded. Let him rest. No one spoke for a long while. Clara stood in the field, hair tangled with soot, eyes red but clear. The sun rose slow and golden behind her, painting the world new. Elias came to her side, silent as always. She looked at him, saw the reflection of herself, stronger, alive, unafraid. I don't know how to thank you, she said. You already did, he replied. You stayed. In the weeks that followed, they rebuilt the barn together. The smell of new wood and sawdust filled the air. The townsfolk passed by and nodded now, their stares softer, their whispers gone. Marjorie Pike even brought a pie, though she pretended it was for Tully a tea night. Clara would hum while she worked, and sometimes Elias would stop what he was doing just to listen. When spring came full, wildflowers grew along the fence line. Clara stood there one morning, sunlight in her hair, hands resting on the gate. The wind moved through the grass, soft and forgiving. Somewhere behind her, Elias spoke, barely above the breeze. You belong here, Clara. She turned, eyes shining. I think I finally believe that. He smiled small, rare, real, and the narrator's voice, quiet as the dawn, closes the tale. Sometimes the ones who whisper please, not again, aren't asking for the world to stop hurting. They're asking for one soul to listen, to see them as they are and not as they were. When that happens, the land itself exhales, and even the wind learns to forgive. Asterisk.